Okay, in this video, we are going to be writing equations of linear functions. They're going to give you a graph most likely, in most of these, not all of them. And then you will write an equation of a line, a linear function, and you will interpret it to see what it means and what it looks like and what do the numbers mean in the problem. We are going to be using the y equals mx plus b equation, which is just slope-intercept form of a line. I'm not going to cover point slope in this part because anything that you can do with point slope, you can also do with slope-intercept. And slope-intercept is the more universally used format to write a line. So we have y equals mx plus b. So what do those stand for? The m stands for slope, which is another way of saying rise over run. And you'll hear me sometimes say the change in y, like how much does the y change and how much does the over the change in x. Little triangle math means to change in. So like if you have this point and this point, then the change in y is how much you go up, and the change in x will be how much you go to the right or left to get from one point to another, and that gives you slope, which is rise over run. Okay, so in a picture you can kind of just count and see how you get from one point to another. B equals the y-intercept. That's different than this y. This y basically names a function. It equals the entire equation. B is the y-intercept only. So the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. And at that point, the x value will be 0. So it'll be 0 and whatever the y-intercept is. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and use b there. So it'll be 0b. Okay, so it crosses that. And then m is slope, which is rise over run. And once you know those two things, you can put them in your equation and you have your linear function. So here we go. So for the first problem, we have, says a graph shows a distance that asteroid 2012 DA14 travels in X amount of seconds. So time, the X value, so you have to make sure you know what each axis stands for, okay? Because that's really important that you know what the x-axis stands for and what the y-axis stands for. If not, then the graph doesn't really mean anything. Okay, so the x-axis stands for time, and the y-axis stands for the distance in the amount of miles that the asteroid has traveled. So the first question is really a three-part question. Actually, it's a two-part question. They actually ask you to write an equation of the line and interpret the slope. So what this means, if I want to write an equation, you always want to find m, which is the slope, and you want to find b, which is the y-intercept. So the slope is rise over run. So when you go to the graph, you just need 2 points. Well, first of all, we already know that the y-intercept is 0 because that's where it hits the y-axis. I mean, this is the y-axis. This line here, or this ray, hits the y-axis at 0, 0. It actually doesn't go through. It's a linear function, but it doesn't go negatively. You can't go negatively into time. So, or distance for that matter. So distance and time cannot be negative. So we start at 0, 0. That's where the time is 0, which means we haven't started yet, and then the distance is 0 because it hasn't traveled anywhere yet. So 0, 0. B is that number. Now, the slope is the rise and run. So from 0, 0, how do I get to that point? And you can see, hopefully, that they're counting by ones on the x-axis, but they're not counting by ones on the y-axis. They're not going to get, this one goes all the way to 6, and this one goes up to 24. So the rise over run from one point to another, I'm at point 0, 0. So the rise is from this y to this y. Or you can just go this way if you want. So from 0 to 24, that means it's gone up 24. And that's positive, and we're talking about distance. This is miles. Now, the x values go from 0 to 5. We're going from here to here. Actually, from here to here. I look at it numerically, from there to there, from 0 to 5. So that's 5 seconds. Okay? So I know this is a mess here. You're basically going from this point to this point. The rise is 24 and the run is 5. Okay? If you wanted to do the form, you could do 0, 0 to 524. So on the y side, you're going up 24. On the x side, you're going up 5. And it's always the change in y over the change in x. So you have 24/5. Okay, this is the y. These are the x's. So that's another way of doing that as well when you have 2 points. So once you have that, your equation will be y equals mx plus b. So y is equal to 24/5 x plus b, and b is 0, so that is the equation. So that's this part. Interpret the slope. The slope means that you will, slope means, not you, the asteroid will travel 24 miles in 5 seconds. Okay, now if you wanted to do it per second, you could just do 24 divided by 5 and do a decimal. I believe that is 4.8. No, it's not. Yeah, it is. It's 4.8. So you could do 4.8 miles per second. And you can do it that way if you'd like. Now, for the second part of the question, it says the asteroid came within 1,700 miles of Earth in February 2013. How long does it take the asteroid to travel that distance? So we have to use this equation, and we need to figure out that 17,200 if it goes in for x or for y. Well, we've already talked about what each variable stands for. And since this is in miles, 17,200 is in miles, that means that it needs to go on the y-axis, which means it needs to go where the y is. So in that formula, and of course I'm running out of room here, in this formula we have 17,200 equals 24/5 x. And if you want to solve for that, then you have to undo the 24/5 because you're solving for x. X will tell you how many seconds that is. So you're going to multiply both sides by 5 over 24. When you do that, this side will cancel on the right, and you will get x is equal to, so on your calculator, you're going to run that through. So there's a lot of different ways of doing that. I'm just going to do the top first. So 5 times 17,200 equals, and then divide that by 24. And that's going to give me 3,583.3 seconds, because that's what x is measured in. I don't really want to leave my answer in 3,583 seconds, so I'm going to make that into minutes. Hopefully you know how to do that. Go ahead and do that first if you know how. So I'm going to divide that by 60. And when I divide that by 60, this becomes 59.72 minutes. So basically, it says about how long does it take the asteroid to travel that distance? Your answer could be about an hour. Okay, and that would be good enough. Obviously, you would show your work on how you got there, but about an hour. I really wouldn't answer it in seconds in that case. For the second problem, go ahead and see if you can do that. Pause the video and then do as much of it as you can, and then come back and hit play when you're done and see how well you did. All right, so the graph shows the remaining balance. So that's what Y stands for. On a car loan, after making X amount of monthly payments. Okay, so now we know what X and Y stand for. So X stand for the number of monthly payments that we've made, and Y stands for the remaining balance in thousands of dollars. So that doesn't mean $6, $12, and $18. It means 6,000, 12,000, 18,000. They just write it like this because there's not enough room on the y-axis to write the full number. So write the equation of the line and interpret the slope and the y-intercept. So we have a couple different things here. So let me just do the y-intercept first. That point right there, that's where it hits the y-axis. That point is 0, 18, so b is equal to 18. Okay, so in order to find the slope here, you can do rise over run in the picture, so you can see how far you have to go down and how far you have to go over to get from one point to another. It's a little bit difficult to read the boxes because the boxes don't represent what you think they do unless you want to fill those in. So I'm going to write the points down over here. So 0, 18 is 1 point, and 10, 15 is another point. And I think this is an easier way of doing it. So the change in y is that it goes down 3, and the change in x is that it goes up 10. So remember, this is the change in y because these are the y variables, and this is the change in x because these are the x variables. So when you write the slope, that goes change in y, or rise, over the change in x. So that's your slope. Okay, so the y is changed by 3, but they went down 3, so you need to make a negative. And then the x is changed by 10. And like I said, it's difficult to tell here in this picture that's 310. But if you wanted to, I guess you could fill these values in and put like a 15 there, and then a 9 and a 3. So they're counting by 3s. So each box represents 3. And then here, each box represents 5. So you have 10. So negative 3, 10. That's fine as well. So your equation is going to be negative 3/10 x plus 18. And when you write this x, please don't write the x at the bottom because then it looks like it's negative 3 over 10x. And that's incorrect because the x is not part of the 10. It's negative 3/10 x, not negative 3 over 10x. That would be different. Okay, so that's the answer for the equation. Now we need to interpret the slope and the y-intercept. So the slope represents the change in y, which is negative 3. So negative 3 on the y means that your balance, or the car balance, I'm going to say the car loan balance goes down. I'm going to put decreases by $3,000 every 10 payments. Now, if you wanted to, again, you can reduce that. You would have to put negative 3,000 over 10, which basically means it goes down, if you cancel that, $300 per month. And you can do that as well. It might be easier to actually say that your balance goes down $300 per month instead of 3,000 every 10 payments, but that's fine. Just make sure you don't say that it goes down $3 every 10 payments. And you actually they're not months, they're payments. So, oh, they are monthly payments. So every 10 months or every 10 payments. Either one of those is fine. So that's the slope, or you can say the loan balance decreases $300 per month. For the next part, the y-intercept, maybe you can think about what you think the y-intercept stands for. Okay. And then I'm going to write it down. You could write it down first if you want. The y-intercept is 18. This means that the initial car loan is, or was, $18,000. Now you can't just say what's the y-intercept and say 18 or 18,000 even, or $18,000. You need to explain what that means. It means that your initial car loan was $18,000. That was your balance. So that's how much money you borrowed. The last question asks you to answer the what is the balance? What is the remaining balance after 36 payments? So you've paid 36 payments, and then how much money do you have left? So if you want, you can, it's hard to use a table here because we don't know exactly where 36 is, okay? So we need to use our equation. So this is the equation here. And so 36 payments are the x value. So it means we're going to put 36 here. So with your calculator, we're going to do y is equal to negative 3/10 times 36 plus 18. So if you do that, and you multiply 3/10, negative 3/10, so negative 3, and actually you can make 36 over 1. So you could do negative 3 times 36, and then divided by 10. And that's going to give you negative 10.8 plus 18. So y is going to equal negative 7.2 thousand, which means you multiply that. So that means you're going to owe $7,200 after 36 payments. Okay, so for this question, that's your answer, $7,200. So you can't, make sure you don't say $7.02. That's not negative. It should be positive. So sorry about that. 7.2. So don't put $7.20. Remember that the balance is measured in thousands of dollars. So that's going to be $7,200. For the next part, we have 2 prom venues, and we have a cost per student and we have a rental fee. Okay, we have a cost per student and a rental fee. So we have Lakeside Inn, and we also have Sunview Resort. So Sunview Resort is that equation. Okay, so these are tied together. X stands for the number of students. Okay. And Y stands for the total cost. Okay, so this is the total cost, and X stands for the number of students. So when you read this, the total cost, okay, I'm just going to put cost, is equal to $10 per student plus the $600 rental fee. So the y-intercept will be the rental fee of the venue. Okay, so we have one equation here, and now we need a second equation for the Lakeside Inn. So in order to write an equation, we need M and we need B. So I'm going to show you how to find those two things. So if you look on this side, 25, 25, 25, 25. Those don't all have to be the same, by the way. But if they're all the same on the X, all those changes, then the Y's all have to be the same. So that's 300, 300, 300, and 300. So that means that your slope is 300 over 25. Remember, it's change in Y over change in X. And if you reduce that, that would be 12. Okay? So the slope is 12. So for the Lakeside, you're going to have Y equals 12X. That means that it costs $12 per student for Lakeside. And then we still don't know the y-intercept yet. So in order to find the y-intercept, we need to work the x down to 0. Okay? So in order to get down to 0, I'm going to use this space down here and pretend I was going backwards on this. Okay? So the one before the 100 would be 75. And the one before the 1500 would be 1200. Remember, now we're subtracting 25 and subtracting 300. So if I subtract 25 and subtract 300, subtract 25, subtract 300, and subtract 25 and subtract 300, then this is my y-intercept, so that's going to be plus 300, and that would be the rental fee for the venue. So this is Lakeside. Okay? And all the variables stand for the same thing. X stands for total number of students, or the cost per student in this case. The y-intercept is the rental fee, and then y is the total cost for that venue. And I erased the y. All right. Which venue charges less per student? This one will have to be the Sunview Resort, which charges $10 per student. And then Lakeside Lakeside Inn charges $12 per student. So the answer to the question is Sunview Resort. The question B says how many students must attend for the total cost to be the same. So Y represents the total cost. So for Sunview, the total cost is 10x plus 600. For Lakeside, the total cost is 12x plus 300. So in order for them to be equal, then you need 10x plus 600 to equal 12x plus 300. And so if you were to do the math, you subtract 10x from both sides, you're going to get 2x. And then if you subtract 300 from both sides, you're going to get 300 here. Let me make sure I did this math right over here. 300 after that, then 900, 600, and 300. Yeah. So then x equals 150, so it would be 150 students would have to attend in order for the prices to be the same. The last one says Maple Ridge, so this is a new place, charges a rental fee plus $10 a student. Okay, so y is equal to mx plus b. So we have the total cost is $1,900, $10 per student, and then we don't know what b is. Oh, we do know, though, that we're trying to solve for that. We know that m is 10, and then we do know that there are 140 students for this price. So 1,900 equals 10 times 140 students plus b. So 1,900 equals 1,400 plus b. So 500 equals b. So b equals 500. So for Maple Ridge, we have y is equal to 10x plus 500. So it charges exactly the same amount per student as, let me find a different highlighter, Maple Ridge charges $10 a student, which is the same as the Sunview Resort. But the Sunview Resort has a higher rental fee, $600. So the Sunview Resort is definitely more expensive than Maple Ridge, because Sunview is equal to $10 a student plus $600, and Maple Ridge is $10 a student plus $500. However, it says describe the number of students that must attend for Maple Ridge, the cost at Maple Ridge to be less than the other two. Well, Maple Ridge is already less than Sunview. You don't have to do anything there. Okay, this one is already less than this one just by their formulas. This one's $10 plus $10 a student plus 500, and this one's $10 a student plus 600. Now I just need to see how I can make Maple Ridge less than Lakeside Inn. So I need Maple Ridge to be less than the Lakeside Inn. So Maple Ridge is 10x plus 500. I need that to be less than Lakeside Inn, and Lakeside Inn is this one, 12x plus 300. So if I solve this, I'm going to subtract 10x from both sides. That gives me 2x, and then I'm going to subtract 300 from both sides. That gives me 200, so that's 100. So there needs x greater than 100. X stands for the number of students, so that means the number of students must be greater than 100 for Maple Ridge to be less than the other two venues. And that's your final answer for that part. So that was a long thing. More than anything, it was there to have you figure out what all the numbers stand for, how to interpret the data that's been given to you. And I have a pretty good idea that if there's probably more than 100 people going to prom, if that was a prom venue. And when you go back, yeah, 2 prom venues, unless they were really small schools. So that's it. Until next time.